Hello, welcome back to the Reading Mama. My name is Heather. I am the Reading Mama. I'm actually mama to 8 infant, all the way up to soon to be 15, which is crazy. Today, I wanted to share my May wrap up, if you will. May was surprisingly and shockingly an awesome, is that enough adjectives there? Reading month. It was great. I read 16 books. I DNF'd 4. And I started a few others that I didn't finish. I'm in the middle of. And so I'm going to try to go through these as quickly as possible. Let's start with the not so good. Let's start with the DNFs. I DNF'd It Starts With Food. This is the original Whole30 book, and I had read it years ago, and it really helped me with a lot of understanding food things. As I was rereading it, which it actually is like my second or third time rereading it, I realized that there's some things that are said as fact and they are not fact, and that was troublesome. I was rereading it in hopes that it would kind of spearhead my own health journey, which I'm working on, but also to possibly use with my high schooler for a health resource, and it's just no, because it wasn't all factual. And some things are great, but they're not, you have to do it this way. Anyways, so I DNF'd that. I very quickly DNF'd Lord of the Flies, which was also a pre-read for next year. Not that I don't think that it probably has some great nuances and things to learn from it. There's a reason it's a classic. I'm not sure what the reason is, because the writing style is atrocious. Like, I didn't enjoy it at all. I don't know. Sorry to those of you who love Lord of the Flies. It was not the storyline. I love dystopian, that kind of wild survival. It was just unrelatable and poor writing. I just didn't like it. Heart of Darkness, I also DNF'd. That was also a pre-read for next year. It's also a reread from high school. I loved it in high school. I made it probably halfway through the book and DNF'd it because the concepts and things that it's trying to teach, regarding differences in race and how we perceive other cultures and things like that, I feel like it's done better in other books, and so we're just not going to read that one, and I'm actually going to unhaul that book. And then I DNF'd White Sands Red Menace, which is the sequel to the first book I actually read of the month. So let me talk about the book I read and why I DNF'd the sequel. So the first book I read this month was a middle grade called Green Glass Sea by Ellen Klages, and I love this. You follow a young girl. You have a couple of point of views from children of those who were in, I cannot think of where it is, where they were building the atomic bomb. I can't think of what it's called now. And so they all went to New Mexico, and they're living in this like little made up village here that Oppenheimer and his people all created, and their families came with them because that helps them work better. It's a long process. Anyways, when you get the point of view of a couple of different children, it talks about topics of parental loss. I will warn you that I was not prepared for that, and that hit me hard. And then also just bullying and relationship issues, and so it did really good with that. But it also talked about the ethics of the atomic bomb in a way that I thought was very approachable for middle grade and a good introduction to the topic, and so I absolutely love that. The sequel was White Sands Red Menace, and you follow the characters as they move on to the next project of working with nuclear power and things. And it's not that it was going to be bad or anything. I wanted to read something different at that time, so I may revisit that and go back to it, so it wasn't bad. The next book I read for May was called Bomb by Steve Sheinkin, and this follows a lot of different things. I love Steve Sheinkin. I've now read most of his books that are out for kids, and this is, I'm gonna say it could be middle grade if you have an advanced middle grader. This is definitely a YA in my opinion, but you're following those people who are making the bomb, the atomic bomb. So it was a good pairing with the Ellen Klages book. But Steve Sheinkin does a great job of sharing the cultural and personal anecdotes of the time of what was going on, as well as the factual events. And I think he does it in such a way that it makes the reader want to analyze and think for themselves without just saying, this is what you should think about it. Here's the ethical dilemma. Here's the moral dilemma. He does a really great job. And he does a good job also of bouncing back and forth between the main characters of the time period and all the different things that are going on. I also read his Fallout the previous month, and that was similar, just really good. It doesn't have a lot of pictures in it. It is very, it's a book, okay? This is a nonfiction book, but it is written in such a narrative way that you want to keep reading, and I absolutely loved it. So I highly recommend Mom and Anything by Steve Sheinkin. Next up, I read another pre-read for school. These are all pre-reads so far. And that was The Westing Game. And this is one that I remember reading as a kid, and I absolutely loved it. And I absolutely loved it again. So Ellen Raskin wrote this book, and it is the quintessential little, I think they even had a movie about it, murder mystery for a middle grader, without being gruesome, without being graphic. Still I'm not going to give away the ending, but it is super interesting. And so basically there's this wealthy man in Chicago, Sam Westing, and there's mixed opinions about his personality, his morality, his everything. And his house has been left vacant for a long time, and suddenly there's smoke rising from it. But who notices the smoke coming from that house? Well, it's this interesting group of people who have all moved into a new apartment building that has been erected right next to it. And come to find out, they all have some kind of connection to Sam Westing. And you go back and forth with who is telling the story. And what's interesting about how she writes, it's not like one chapter is this person and the next, I mean, it's like one paragraph is this person and then the next paragraph might be somebody else. It's just kind of like a rambling train of thought. It had a really good foreword that kind of explained how she wrote it, or an introduction by her friend. And I thought that did very well of saying that that's kind of how she came about writing the story. She just didn't really sit down and outline it. She came up with all this interwoven thing like on the go. And that's kind of how it's written. But while it might be a detriment to many writers to do that way, it is not for this. This is a great one. I have all my kids reading a mystery to start out the school year. I thought that would be fun. And this is going to be my middle schoolers, and I think they're going to love it because it's hilarious, the things that happen. And then it's just one that it's a page turner. You don't want to put it down. And then I read another pre-read. Man, I was on fire in May. To Kill a Mockingbird. And I had mentioned in a video that I wasn't impressed with the first chapter. Well, now I see what y'all have been talking about. So, it's a classic, and you're following this family in the 1950s in the South. And, yeah, it has a lot of different concepts that it tackles, and I loved every bit of it. You talk about racism, you talk about classism, you talk about cultures within a city and a county. You have a mystery, you have thrill and crime, all related to children and their father, who is a lawyer. And yeah, it tackles a lot of topics. It was very interesting. It was a good read. The first chapter did not capture my attention, and it definitely got much better. So the only problem I had with this, that I don't know that I will give this to my child, is because the crime that is committed is rape, and my daughter's only 15. I don't know that I'm ready for her to tackle that nuance mentally. And so that was my one caveat. And there were a couple other things where I kept looking at my husband like, you read this in your Christian school? Just some of the words and the way that they talk. And like I said, the concepts of rape and a few other things. And it's just, okay. It kind of shocked me that got passed through, I guess. Not that they shouldn't read it, but I don't know. Their guidelines made me a little questionable about his education. But I highly recommend To Kill a Mockingbird. I just think it's for older kids. I don't think it's a high schooler book, personally. Next I read Anna Wendy Poplars, and actually I finished both, so I got all the way caught up with Chantel's Year of Mod challenge, and that's what these are part of. And so I finished both of these. I don't know how I finished both of them. I mean, I do, because they were wonderful. I did audiobook, and then I did, as you can see, I had to go back and tag some because there were so many good quotes. Anna Wendy Poplars, we left her at Anne of the Island, and she is engaged, and I'm not going to say who, just in case some of you are really unaware. But if you think you know, you probably know. Anyways, she's engaged to him, and but they can't get married. He has to finish medical school. He's studying to be a doctor. And so she takes a job in another city as a headmistress and teacher, and it talks all about her life at this high school that she is now the principal of. And she it talks a lot about the kids and the things going on in the classroom, but also to an extent, but also just her life and her friendships. And it just, with all these Anne books, the way Montgomery portrays just finding beauty and love in other and unsuspecting places, like people who are just not really lovable, and still reaching out to them and trying to find the good in them. It is so encouraging and uplifting. Like, nobody writes like that really anymore. And then just how much she loves everything. And it's not in the sickly, saccharine kind of way. It's just the amazement at God's beauty of the world and the people around her. And there were just so many good quotes. I don't know if I have one that I can share necessarily specifically. Well, that would give that away. I can't tell you that one. Well, here, there you go. One can always find something lovely to look at or listen to, said Anne. So that kind of concept throughout of it. Just, I loved it. Then Anne's House of Dreams, they're married now, and they've moved out to an island, so to speak, or it's more like a peninsula. Actually, there was a map in here, which I thought was kind of amazing, because I've never seen an Anne book with a map. Now, where did the map go? Look at that. We can finally get an Anne map. And so that was helpful. But you follow her and some unsuspecting things. This one is not as saccharine. I will say also this one has part narrative and part letters to her fiance. This one is just narrative. And in this one, you meet a lot of new quirky characters that you just love. And also they have some hard things, hard topics that happen in here. There's a trigger warning for miscarriage, and just so you know, and also not abuse. I mean, abusive parents, mentally abusive. I don't know how to describe it. There's a character in here who has not had a great life, and it's not that anybody hit her or anything, but that nobody treated her well. And it's pretty hard. But this is just a lovely story. Again, I just loved every second of it. I love the way that you see Anne grow up and how things come about. You've totally left the kind of like the romance between her and her husband is just assumed. Like, it's not overly mushy gushy kind of thing. It's just assumed like we're in love, and this is what we did on a Sunday night, and they have inside jokes with some of the characters and things like that. But there were, let's see if I had a quote here. Let's see here. Oh, I love this one. It was, well, let's not borrow trouble, said Anne. The rate of interest is too high. Talking about worrying about the next thing. I just love that. The rate of interest is too high. Anyway, so I highly recommend, enjoyed. I don't know if I'll continue with the mod challenge this month, but we'll see. Let's see here. What did I read next? Okay, next I read a library book, which has already gone back, and it is called Prisoner of Night and Fog by Anne Blankman. If you remember from some of my previous videos, I talked about the Blackbird Girls, about the Chernobyl event by Anne Blankman, and it was phenomenal, middle grade. Prisoner of Night and Fog is technically YA, but again, it deals with some unsavory morality of the sexual nature. And so I would be hesitant to use that with my particular kids. They're very sensitive. But Prisoner of Night and Fog, I would definitely read as a college student, somebody who's maybe just, you understand that that's something that happened. Very, very good. what I expected from Prisoner of Night and Fog is that the main character, who is the like assumed niece, like she's kind of an adopted niece kind of Hitler, was going to become some kind of spy, and then she was going to become a prisoner of Night and Fog, which they were, the Night and Fog prisoners were those that they made escape, or not escape, but to disappear. That's who the Nazis, they disappeared them. If you were caught as a spy, you were classified as Night and Fog, and you were, you know, basically erased from history. And so I thought that's how it was going to go. The title actually comes because of the poem and story of where that whole code name came from, which was very interesting. And Anne Blinkman does a great job of giving us some of the Hitler perspective of into his personal life and things like that. And I was talking with my husband and the kids, and you know, Wagner was his favorite composer. And I'm like, well, that really explains a lot, because one year we did Wagner as a composer study, and we just had his music playing in the background, and we all were angry and snippy at each other, and we stopped listening to it for a couple days and put on something happier, and we were much happier. So maybe that was Hitler's problem. That, and you know, he needed the Lord. But it was a very interesting book from that perspective of somebody who is indoctrinated in the whole Hitler regime. I mean, Hitler is literally family to you. And how that comes about when you start facing some of the realities of the Nazi Party. And there is a mystery that is solved in this, and a thriller regarding her father's death, who she thought died as this great hero protecting Hitler. And you find out what really happened. And it just kind of spirals from there. But it was very good. Definitely wanted to keep reading it. Highly recommend. Next, I listened to Canary Girls by Jennifer Chiaverini. And this, I had if you watched my TBR, I had no clue what this book was going to be about. I just saw that it was set in World War I. That's what we're studying next year for school. I'm like, okay, that'll be fun. I like reading, you know, along the same time period my kids are going to be reading. Yeah, this was not what I expected, but it was really interesting. I would recommend it for high school. There's one sentence, I think, in it where she says something about wanting to make love to her husband so that they can have children. And that was the only questionable thing about the whole book, if you want to call it that. And so basically you're following several different women in England right at the outset. It covers from the beginning of the war to the end. But the war is kind of like a background story. Basically, people are starting to leave. These women find that they can get a job working in munitions, and so they come and join this. And you have all the way from the owner of the munitions factory, his wife is one of the characters that you follow, all the way to the very lowest, to somebody who was in the middle. So you've got all the different classes of ladies who are coming together and different background experiences. And then, so you're getting the story of the munitions factory and the safety issues that came along with that. Along with general life in England during this time, and, you know, the rationing, getting money, and all the postal system, and all these different things. And then on top of that, they start a football team, which is soccer here in America. And part of that is just for fun and to let go some steam. One of the characters, her husband, is a national footballer. He's very popular and everything. And so they form it's like the beginning of the women's football league in the UK. And at the end, there's an afterword that tells you about the real thing and how it only persisted for a little bit, then it stopped, and then it came back. Anyways, it was shockingly really good. I really do not care for the sport of football/soccer. I'm not a sports person, and that one I watched too many kindergartners when I was a teacher. I would go to their games because they asked me to. And you know, you can only watch a 5-year-old run around the field for so long. And I think that kind of ruined any idea I had of wanting to watch any soccer. But it talks about it in such a way that it's not like, oh, I did this play, but it's not like that kind of sports book, but it does give you an interest in why they're doing it, what they're doing, and some of the things that they had to face as women in sports, as women in the workforce. And those are generally not my interest level, but she does a great job of this. So I'm definitely going to be rereading this author because she did a great job. Next book was another audiobook, and I read The Women by Kristin Hannah. I have a love-hate relationship with Kristin Hannah. I love her characters. I love her plots. I really hate her use of swearing and of immodesty and sexual relations. Like, I just, no spice, please. I'm a no spice lady. And so, like, if somebody could rewrite and abridge Kristen Hanna without the spicy scenes, I would love it, because I absolutely love Kristen Hanna. The Women was amazing. If you don't know, you're following nurses in, a nurse specifically, but some nurses in the Vietnam War. This book is one that I just keep thinking about. It is just heartbreaking, earth-shattering. Like, the way that the women, the men, all of that, how they've been treated, it's just, it's too much. It's too much, and it hurts to think that they've suffered both the physical and emotional toll of the war, but then to come home and not to be welcomed back. And then that later the prisoner of wars were welcomed back with the yellow ribbon and all, and they still, you know, at the end they have her go to the wall and the memorial when it first opens up, and like, there are no women in in Vietnam. What? There were, so it was wonderful. It was what I expect from a Kristen Hanna book as far as the content considerations, like I said, but amazing. I was going to say it was my favorite Kristen Hanna so far, but I finished the month with another one that actually topped it. And so let's see here. What did I read after The Women? After The Women, I went back to Anne, which is totally something different. And then I went, let's just switch gears completely. And I started Narnia. We were supposed to, with Chantel's Read All Day, Read Your Bookshelf Challenge, was pick a favorite. So I'm trying to read through Narnia again before I turn 40 in September. So I started with Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. I'm going in publication order, guys. Don't at me. That's what I'm doing. I'm decided. And so I finished this. Loved it just as much as I always do. If you don't know what Narnia and the Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe is about, go pick it up. Trust me, it's life-changing. You'll love it. After Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, or simultaneously, I listened to / read, because I go back and forth, Unbroken by Laura Hillenbrand. Also, mind-blowing, amazing, wonderful book. You follow Louise Zamperini, and this story just, her writing is great because she incorporates some wit. It draws you into the story. It's wonderful. Even better than the movie, which I thought was really well done. But you follow Louise Zamperini, who had a troubled youth, and then he grows up and he becomes an Olympic runner, and then before he can go to the Olympics again, he goes into the military during World War II. His plane crashes, and he is in a lifeboat for like almost 2 months, and then rescued by the Japanese and becomes a prisoner of war, and is specifically targeted for the hatred of some of his prison guards. And then at the end, he miraculously he has a hard life. He goes to a Billy Graham thing, gets saved, and changes his whole life, and spends the rest of his life going around and telling people about Jesus and sharing the gospel and helping troubled youth like he was. It's just the most amazing story, and you'll be crying throughout it, and you'll love it. It will break your heart over and over, and you will be angry and furious, and yet you will end just feeling so, you get the happy fuzzies. It's just wonderful. I love Laura Hillenbrand. And I think, and I said in the other video when I was about halfway through it, I've never in my heart desired to read Seabiscuit, but I found out that she wrote that, and so I'm like, well, maybe I do want to read a horse book. Maybe I will read Seabiscuit, because her writing was phenomenal. Which brings me to another book I finished, which was War Horse by Michael Morpurgo. I can never say his name. That's a library book, so it's already gone back. And again, we follow a horse. And again, I did not think I would enjoy it. The movie was good. The book was phenomenal. It's okay because it's not like a talking horse, even though you're getting his thoughts and perspectives as he is in World War I. And he goes from being a colt and raised on a farm and a farm horse, and then his various roles throughout World War I. And I won't tell you how it ends in case you haven't read it, but it gives you an insight into what it would have looked like in World War I, and it's written for middle grade, and it is a perfect introduction to World War One for middle grade, because you get you see some of it is without so much of the gruesome, grotesque violence that it was, because it was a bloody, horrible, horrible thing. And while it's kind of peripheral, you're not getting the description that you get in a lot of other books. So definitely War Horse was great middle grade. And then I read 21 Balloons. This, I put it on my 40 before 40, not because I thought it would be a great book, because it sat on my shelf for years, just sat there. Because somebody told me, oh, it's a great book, kids will love it. And so I bought it, and then it just sat on my shelf. And it's been there ever since. And my kids don't want to read it. And so I was like, well, I'm going to read it so that way I can at least tell them what it's about. And it's absurd and hilarious. It made me laugh out loud multiple times. It was a quick read. It's a middle grade read. I was shocked to hear my husband said his 9th grade teacher read it out loud to them. I was like, he's like, yeah, and I hated it. I'm like, yeah, probably, because it's meant for like 10-year-olds. Not that you can't read it as a 16-year-old, but to be forced to listen to somebody read it as a 16-year-old, probably not the best. Anyways, because I'm 39 and I loved it. But 21 Balloons, you follow a Professor William Waterman Sherman, who is a retired mathematics professor. And he has decided to spend the next year floating around the world in his hot air balloon that he constructs himself. Well, things don't go as he plans, and he lands on the island of Krakatoa. And on Krakatoa, there are some very interesting characters living there who have an entire society, and then they tell him he's never allowed to leave. But things happen. Krakatoa, the volcano, explodes, and they have to escape. So much nonsense. It's just a bunch of silly nonsense for different things. There was one section that just made me laugh out loud. I don't know. And what's really nice is that these illustrations are by the author, William Penet Dubois, because he's got a signature on them. And it's not like heavy. Okay, that was a bad example. But there are several where you're going to go several pages with just writing and not pictures. But when you get a picture, it is phenomenal. And so I highly, highly recommend this. It is just beautiful. And I totally, look at that dedication page. To my wife with love. Oh, it's precious. Anyways, but it was a fun read. Definitely enjoyed that. Next, I read 2 books. I did these via Libby. They were ebooks, way outside my comfort zone, and pushed a little bit of my parameters of what I deem an acceptable book. But I actually really loved them. The thing that let me just tell you what the books are. So the first one is called The Stardust Grail by Yume Kitase. I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong, but The Stardust Grail is a science fiction kind of thriller story, and it's YA. You follow a girl. That's when I actually did audiobook. I forgot. And you follow this young girl as she tries to find a specific item. She's an archaeologist by trade. She actually was a thief before, and now she's kind of an archaeologist, and she's in school, grad school and things, and all kinds of chaos happens, and there are other beings in the universe, and she's friends with one, and she's trying to help that one. Chaos ensues. I say that a lot. I don't really know how to say what's going on without telling. There were 2 things that bothered me about this book. I will give you those content considerations. One is the use of pronouns, especially when you're doing an audiobook, because when they say they, them, and they are talking about a singular person, my brain can't understand that. And then 2, there was one instance where somebody was looking at something pornographic, and that is a big no-no. But like I said, it was one sentence, and we moved on. And then there was a homosexual couple, but that was kind of like a background thing. The pronouns were annoying though. But otherwise the story was great. I don't know that I'd recommend it because of those 3 things. The story and the plotline were wonderful as you follow her through, but through the adventure and try to save help save this race. But yeah, those things kind of, so why did I pick up another one of her books? I don't know, because the plot was really good. So I picked up The Deep Sky, which is actually Yume's first book, and you follow a group of 80 women from one person's point of view as they are traveling to another planet, and en route, a murder happens, and it's a murder mystery, and that drew me in. And I really enjoyed it, but again, you have homosexuality, multiple pronouns, um, minor swearing, I think. That was like a minor thing. Um, there wasn't anything sexual in it other than there were homosexual relationships. Um, and it wasn't, like I said, again, interesting story, interesting plot, but those things would make it so that I don't recommend the book because of that. I would love if this author could write something without those things, but I'm guessing that that's her intention and purpose in writing them. So I digress. And then last, I come to The Great Alone. It's the last book I listened to for the month, and that is by Kristen Hanna, and I absolutely loved it. It was my favorite one by her. But again, swearing and sexual things, but actually it was the least graphic of those for hers. It references it more, but it didn't actually describe them really, except maybe in one chapter, if I remember. It's the least spicy of her books that I've read so far. Let's put it that way. And in this story, you're following a mother and daughter and husband family. The father is a Vietnam prisoner of war, and he has some troubles, and he's an alcoholic. He self-medicates with it, and he has good days and he has bad days. And they are going to go to Alaska, where he has inherited his friend Beau's property, and he's going to live there. When they get to Alaska, they realize they are woefully unprepared, but the community rallies and they come together because that's what you do in Alaska. And I loved that aspect of it. I loved the community. I loved the survival parts of it. I loved the relationship between the mother and daughter, even though it's so very toxic, but it's written well. And just the love of both of them for each other and to protect each other. And the father struggles in Alaska, and the community once again steps in. And then more things, just a lot of tragedy. It's got a lot of tragedy in it. Just when you think you're done, there's more. But her writing style draws you in to the characters, and you're invested, and you follow the plot line through of this family and how they come together or split apart, depending on how you look at it and from whose point of view. And what happens, and it ends just beautifully. All of hers end with just a hard but beautiful ending. Like, they're broken but healing, is how all of her books kind of end. And I think that's kind of how we live life, right? We're broken and we're working towards healing. It was beautiful. I loved it. I love the characters. I love the story. Though it probably, I don't, not more violent. It was the least spicy of her books. And it was probably, that I've read, let's put it that way. And it was one that had a storyline that interested me, because that homesteader lifestyle and the community, that's what I would love someday, but not where I'm at right now. So The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna was a good read. So in all, I read 16 books, DNF'd 4. That's pretty amazing for end of school month, Maycember, all that. So if you have a comment on any of the books I shared, which I'm so sorry this is so long, please drop it below. Let me know what you thought of these books. If you have made it to the end, drop a emoji for, is that what they're called still? Emoji of something you plan to do this summer. Have a great day.